Okay, good. Well, welcome everybody. I have 12 o'clock. We like to start and end on time. I'm Dale Caldwell, your host for our Family Business Friday program, and I'm a professor and executive director at the Rothman Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship in Silverman College at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And we have yet another outstanding guest. We're honored to have Jill Johnson, the CEO of the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership, EIFL. Jill, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. I'm excited to learn from you today. As always, and those who are regulars, I see we have some new people here. I go through, who the Rothman Institute is and just kind of set the stage, and then we'll get into some of the questions. So our mission of the Rothman Institute is to support, promote, and research entrepreneurship with a special focus on family and veteran businesses. One of the things that I haven't said is that there is a Rothman Institute, an orthopedic institute, which advertises very heavily and is all over. And so you don't know how many people have said, well, you guys did my knee. I said, no, that's not us. But, we do appreciate their helping our celebrity. But we focus purely on entrepreneurship. We wouldn't exist without our sponsors. We have the TD Bank Charitable Foundation, Provident Bank, Sun Trust, CIA&J. All of them are just tremendous supporters of us. We have a veterans program with some other sponsors on top of this, but this is really focused on family businesses. Tony Russo from CIA&J normally joins us, but Tony made the choice of being on vacation instead of being on the call, which is probably a good choice, but we will miss him. So some of our programs, obviously we're at a university, so we focus on student entrepreneurship programs. We have run by Sue Slavin and Maura Panuski, a FDU pitch, where we help young budding entrepreneurs put their presentations together and actually bid for some real cash. And then the winners go on to the former Bell Labs to a statewide competition where most of the major universities in the state participate. So it's a great opportunity for young people. And as we know, and the reason we're doing this is, gone are the days of all these, long-term jobs and big corporate jobs. Entrepreneurship is really the wave of the future. And so a lot of young people are really interested in that. We have our Family Business Alliance, where we have members of this alliance. It's been around 30 years, but what we do is really provide educational forums. We have a coaching, mentoring session, which is incredibly valuable. We share all sorts of information with family businesses. So any family businesses that are interested in being part of our Family Business Alliance, please reach out to us at rothman@fdu.edu, rothman@fdu.edu. We have our Family Business Awards. This year will be our 28th year, where we honor those family businesses that are under 10 million and over 10 million and have a number of nominees. So we are taking applications now. If you know a business, especially during the pandemic, that's gone above and beyond, we'd love to get their name and talk to them and put them in the nomination category. We have a program called Veterans Launching Ventures, where we help veterans and their family members develop business plans and grow their businesses. And then we have a small business series where we have some extraordinary speakers talking to providing information for small businesses. We've started something called Family Business Week. Those of you know, we mention this every week, and American Express has Shop Small Saturday. We thought that family businesses, since they're about 80% of the global economy, about 50% of the US economy, but 80% of the global economy, it's important to celebrate them. So the fourth week in October, we ask people to identify and support a family business wherever they are. We'd like them to do them every day of the year, but certainly on that week, we really want to celebrate them, and that coincides with our Family Business Awards week. We also have started Shop Family NJ. It's an opportunity for people to buy gift cards for family businesses, especially restaurants now. They're really hurting, that aren't getting the revenue that they need to survive. So if you go on there, there's an opportunity to identify some restaurants and buy some gift cards for them. I have a stream TV show called Family Business World at RVN TV, where I interview family businesses and people who work with family businesses. And I've been doing that since November, and it's been very, very well received. And there are so many wonderful family businesses, but more importantly, I do that because I really want people to understand how special these businesses are. One of the realities is family businesses treat employees, I think, better than any other segment of society, including government, including nonprofits, and including corporations. Once you are accepted by the family business, you become family. And they do just about anything to keep them. And the show airs on rvntv.tv every Thursday at 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. Obviously, our Family Business Fridays, which we anticipate, other than holidays, doing through the end of the year. These kinds of programs, we bring in outstanding people like Jill, who can get you to think differently about your business and really hopefully help you succeed, not only during the pandemic, but after the pandemic. And here's our Veterans Launching Ventures program that I talked about, where it's been incredibly successful at helping veterans develop business plans and their immediate family members. And veteranbusinessworld.com. You can really, if you want to learn more, just look at familybusinessworld.com or veteranbusinessworld.com. And then we have our YouTube channel, the Rothman Institute, where this recording and other recordings are. So if you missed this or you missed a past session, you can just go on YouTube, look up Rothman Institute of Entrepreneurship, and you can get that information. I'm honored to have, and that's where I reconnected with Jill, to serve on the New Jersey Restart and Recovery Advisory Council for Main Street. And Jill has been an active part of that. And we're really trying to advise the government about what they need to do to open as quickly and safely as possible. And I'll ask you too, Jill, about that. And then now getting in this crisis, this is why we're here, is these businesses closed, this COVID-19, which things were getting better, and then now in some places they're getting worse. And this is an important slide that I show, and I will continue to show, that you look in the 2009, 2010, in the heat of the previous crisis, there were 700,000, the weekly record was 700,000 unemployment claims. Now, as you can see, we're upwards of 20 million or so. And the difference is that crisis hurt small businesses, but not as much as this crisis. It hurt big businesses even more and hurt the stock market. But now, because small businesses are impacted, you're seeing greater unemployment. You're seeing greater challenges to the country. And again, this is old, and unemployment was getting a little bit better. But now, with the pandemic kind of starting up again, we're starting to see that it's getting worse again. And so, if you look across the country, and again, this is literally changing every week. You see where New Jersey is, but now some of these states that are low are getting higher with unemployment. And so, why is this important? It's important, and I show this slide, and I've gotten a lot of comments from people about this, to say, I didn't know that businesses under 100, it's about 70% of small businesses have fewer than 100 employees, 20% have fewer than 500, and only 10.4% are large corporations, are considered large corporations. And you say, well, why don't politicians pay more attention to small and family businesses? The reality is the margins are very slim. The profit margins are very slim for small and family businesses. So they don't have money to hire lobbyists, to lobby government for special privileges. Yet big corporations have those extra dollars to hire lobbyists, and unions have those extra dollars to hire lobbyists. So if you're a politician that doesn't come from a small business, you assume that's where, I only hear from these folks, that's where the action is. So they were blindsided by this pandemic, closing down the small businesses and realizing that, wait, that's where people are employed. So I know, Jill, you have a lot to say about this. So I want to just tee it up. And with that, I want to welcome you again. And first, I want to just say a little bit about what Eiffel does, and then I want to hear about your background.
Sure. And again, great to be here. And I'm so glad that you clarified that orthopedic group, because I looked up and I was like, wait a second, did they change focus or something? So thank you for that clarification. It is really, really good to be here and have this conversation. It's so good to be reconnected with you. The Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership, as you know, Dale, is a not-for-profit organization. My father and I founded it together, so I'm really happy to talk about the whole family business thing. But my father and I started the organization together in 2002, and our focus really has always been in helping women, minority businesses, to better connect with the knowledge networks and capital that are needed to make success possible. And more recently, as of about a year and a half ago, we decided to do a pivot with the organization to really focus on systemic level challenges and barriers and how we can eradicate those barriers to really make the American dream through entrepreneurship possible for more people.
That is, I mean, and you've been doing this for a long time. This has been your heart and soul. So tell me a little more about your background.
We're not going to talk about how long.
Yeah, we won't say how long we've known each other. It's been a long time. But now you grew up, and now where did you go to high school and college, and how did you get to this, to start this?
Yeah, sure. So I always say I did grow up in New Jersey, but I am a Midwesterner by birth. I was born in Iowa. My parents are from the Midwest. So we are Midwesterners. I grew up in New Jersey, though, more specifically, mostly in Plainfield. Went to Plainfield High School. I graduated from Plainfield High School, then went to Harvard, studied economics. So my undergraduate degree is in economics. Then from there, went to work at Goldman Sachs and started my career in the financial analyst program in mergers and acquisitions at Goldman Sachs. But my experiences with all of this started with my parents and their business, what was considered a family business. They had a newspaper publishing company. They started it in Plainfield, and it was called Plainfield Today. And then at a point, they wanted to address the larger market of New Jersey and everything that was going on in Newark. So they moved the office to Newark and rebranded the newspaper as City News. And it was the largest statewide African-American newspaper in New Jersey. And they also had the Minority Business Journal, which I'm sure you remember that. So they had the Minority Business Journal. So I grew up, just in the thick of these issues and talking about these challenges around businesses.
And the 100 Most Influential, talk a little bit about the
100 Most Influential was an amazing, amazing annual event that they held. And it was recognizing people who were leaders in a number of different categories. I think it was, people in business, education, health, the arts, across all different areas. Really the best thing about that event, and I think something that was very much underestimated at the time, or not valued as much, was the power in that event to bring people together. As you remember, Dale, I mean, there were politicians, corporate CEOs, there were just regular people, community activists, community leaders, and it wasn't thought of as a Black event. It was just thought of as an event for the New Jersey community and people who were leaders in their own right to come together.
Well, and there were people before they became governor who eventually became governor who were on that list of the 100
Right.
most influential, and that was important. And I had the honor of being, I was a certified financial planner at one time, of writing the financial planning column for City News for a couple years. And so, your dad is just an amazing person and a mentor of mine. And so why Eiffel? What got you, Goldman Sachs, you're living the life, you went to Harvard, it's not Princeton, but Harvard's okay. So I have to put that in there.
I couldn't get with those eating clubs, Dale.
But so you're living the life, and Goldman, and so now why get into this entrepreneurship, which is certainly not as lucrative?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I mean, it wasn't a straight jump. But what's interesting is that in reflecting about my Goldman experience, again, it was an amazing platform to launch a career and to get that, to have that experience and that background. And that is really what opened my eyes to the notion of building wealth through your business. I know we're going to talk about that, but that's what really, where I had the opportunity to see people who started businesses, built those businesses, grew them to, substantial levels, and they were able to extract the value through an exit by selling the business. And mostly, again, I was in mergers and acquisitions, so it was mostly through a sale of the company. I wasn't familiar with that path, with that trajectory. When my father talked about their business, he always talked about my kids never having to want for a job, being able to hire family members, which he did, other family members outside of our immediate family, being able to hire people in the community. And, their newspaper helped to launch a lot of people on their journey. So he talked about it in that context and being a good participant in the community. It wasn't about wealth building per se, and it's just not something that they were really familiar there. So, and so Goldman helped to open my eyes to that. But in the same vein as we're talking about some of the issues now that that has sort of risen to the top of the conversation about the microaggressions that people face in corporate America and not having the mentors and the champions and the people to help guide the career path and things like that. Looking back, I don't feel like I had a path. I mean, I think that was, and I probably didn't even verbalize it at the time, but I don't know that I felt that there was really a path for me, and especially being a woman. There weren't examples of people who were in very senior positions as women who had a family. And I knew very early on, I mean, I have 4 children, so, it worked out for me, but, I did not see being able to have a family and rise in my career on that path. So, I just early on took myself off of that path. Again, it was a great experience, but it wasn't the path that I wanted to pursue. And I also felt like it was a place where the purpose of the job was to make people a lot of money. Right. And you make a lot of money through doing that. But those people, unfortunately, did not look like me, did not represent people in my community. And so it just, while I enjoyed it, I didn't have the passion for doing it.
So one of the things, and I want to, because again, I knew John Corzine very well. I don't know this governor as well, but I've been on his transition and other committees. And so the perspective, I wrote a book called Intelligent Influence, and they were all products of our influence. And our worldview is colored because of our influence. And so sometimes, we've had 2 Goldman Sachs governors, and sometimes it seems like they don't understand small business. And again, this isn't talking about our current governor or John Corzine or others. What is the perspective coming out? If you spent your whole career at Goldman and you come into the world, do you just don't understand how important small businesses are? What would you say, having been on both sides?
Yeah, and again, I started my career at Goldman, but that was a very, small part. I was 2 years in New York and a year in Chicago, and then took myself back to work with my parents. And then I wrote business plans during the dot-com era. So I've had a number of different experiences that have shaped my view on this. Mm-hmm. And what I will say is that, I think that the 2 governors that we've had from Goldman, John Corzine and Phil Murphy, both get business. They're experts in business in general and, the world of economics. That, however, does not translate to small businesses oftentimes and the realities that small businesses face. And I think the challenge is that even when you think of small businesses, Dale, we know that category of small business is really broad. So in their minds, and again, not just them, but politicians in general, and I think that this was especially evident in the way that PPP was crafted, that when they think small business, they think a $10 million company, right. Small $20 million company. And when many of us think small, we think, the company that has 5 employees, 2 employees, and, they're $500,000 in revenue or so. So there's that definition of small business is actually very confusing, and often it's really it's important to be very clear about which segment is the target of the conversation. So I think that that's more of the issue, is that so many people, again, think that they understand business, and that translates just kind of on a scaled down version. But the issues for small businesses And again, what level of small business even further exacerbates that differentiation in thinking.
Well, one of the things I say on many of these Zoom calls is that if every politician in America had to have made payroll, this would be a very different country. Right? And I say that, I keep saying it every week, and some people are tired of hearing me saying it, but I mean that. It's that, and it's not that they're bad people. It's just they don't understand what it takes that, to really make sure that you may not eat for a week, but they say, oh, you're a $20 million company. Well, that doesn't mean it goes in your pocket. And so, you've been at it longer than I have. And so I'm sure you've experienced some of that.
Yeah, no, Dan, I mean, it's the cash flow. I mean, I think the same is true if, politicians didn't have health care, if they had to survive on the same health care that the average person has. It's being in the world of small business is just very different. It is unique. The making payroll. If the vendor that you, or rather the customer that you're serving, doesn't pay in 30 days and they're stretching you out to 60 days and 90 days, the person on the other side of that phone might get tired of you calling, oh my gosh, why is this person, being such a pest? But again, that could mean the difference in you eating or not, or having to lay someone off, or, make other very tough choices. And then when you look at the segments of small businesses that are so underfunded, and that's a whole nother conversation. But when you start out your business severely undercapitalized, that just has a snowball effect. And so, the understanding of small business is very much shaped by your experience with it, your understanding of how it works from the inside. Dale, even issues around minimum wage, are shaped in that, people often try to draw the lines between, Democrat and Republican, but small business issues fall on both sides, and it's right in the middle. And often the issues of small business owners are not fully being met by either of, the traditional party politics.
Yeah, well, and that's absolutely right. So tell me a little more about some of the projects that IFL has been working on over the years.
Sure. So I'm not going to go back as far as over the years, because I think that our focus has shifted a little bit, and I want to spend the time on that. We have done training programs, and we've done a lot of one-on-one work. I mean, the whole premise around IFL initially was around the need for small businesses to have much more hands-on support, that just training is not really enough, that there's a need for that dive hands-on, let me help you get it done. Because often the business owner knows that, they know what they know, but when it comes to the different areas of running the business, those business issues, not their expertise. So, we have kind of taken all the knowledge that we have gained, both through IFL and then, me personally and my different experiences, and rolled that up to some initiatives that I, mentioned before, really focus at a much more systemic level. So the first one that we launched last year was called Women of Color Connecting. And the focus was to really address the needs of women of color who have the potential to grow, scale, exit. And again, that exit piece was around how do you take what you have built and create wealth. The whole thing is it's not just enough to start a business and to have a business. We want to see more people growing those businesses and actually creating wealth. Wealth doesn't have to mean, Facebook type wealth or, Uber type wealth. What it means is even a company that grows to, $5-10 million, and then they sell to a competitor or sell to someone else in the family. So we feel that that's really important. Through that initiative, we created a model called Success Circles, where it's really creating a team approach, utilizing volunteer talent and expertise. There are a lot of really smart people out there who are amazing at what they do, and are willing to take a few hours, a week to help a small business owner. So we've created these Success Circles teams And we are matching those with entrepreneurs based on their specific needs. And we were originally applying that just to this target audience of women of color who have the potential to grow, scale, exit. Well, then fast forward and COVID comes along. And, you know, it's interesting, Dale, you know, you talk to people you haven't spoken with in a while and they say how you're doing. And, you know, I feel like in general, I'm doing fine. My family's healthy and, you know, all of that good stuff. But the thing that does keep me up at night actually is what this is doing and what it can potentially do to small businesses. I think that we haven't even scratched the surface in terms of the impact that this will have on small businesses. I think there have been many small businesses that have held on, you know, in hopes of, okay, we're going to restart and turn things around and everything will be good and we'll recover. And it's hard to operate on, you know, 25% capacity, 50% capacity when you have to have all this specialized equipment and do things differently. It is a different world. And, you know, with what's going on, we're facing the possibility of future shutdowns. Again, like this, you know, that could be a rolling sort of thing. So I personally am really, really, I think the situation is much more dire than what many people are acknowledging. So we took our Success Circles model and launched a program to apply that model to regular Main Street businesses. That's, you know, who we need to see saved. And so we call that Small Businesses Need Us, and people can find that at smallbusinessesneedus.org. So what we say is that just as medical professionals have been on the front lines to save lives, we need our business professionals to get on the front lines to help save small business. So we are engaging people from who are either on their own or are part of corporations and getting corporate partners involved. You know, we're getting them involved on the volunteer side and creating these teams. And if someone is a small business that is struggling just to figure out how to pivot, you know, and not just how to pivot for the moment, but how to pivot in a way that if there are shutdowns again, that they can sustain and be in a position to grow and even leverage the fact that people can't go out. You know, for those small business owners, there is an application process. It's not that we're just taking, you know, 5 or 10 and there's a limited number. We want to help as many businesses as we can. So, you know, people are being very generous with their time. We have a very large group of volunteers that have signed up. So we're ready to help small businesses today.
And what's the website again?
smallbusinessesneedus.org.
Wonderful. So smallbusinessesneedus.org. And you've done a lot of wonderful work. So what advice, you know, one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on is that so many businesses, and you don't have to want to sell, but you need to know the value of your business. You need to, that's your measure. That's like your grade in class. That's how you evaluate what you're doing with your business. So what advice do you have to today's entrepreneur, family business, small business leader?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. So in talking about that, and this is something that, you know, Dale, how you get those aha moments from time to time. And I was thinking about something else, and one day it was just kind of this aha moment. I was like, wait a second. You know, everyone needs to be in a position to not be working their business any longer, which means essentially you're in a position to sell. And when speaking with many business owners, they'll say, oh, you know, my business is my life. I never want to sell. I always want to work my business, or I want to keep it in the family. But here are some things to think about. And this is why I do talk, ever since I had that aha moment, I do talk about this a lot. How many small business owners can actually take a vacation? I know so many. You know, the thought of taking a vacation, leaving their business for 2 weeks. I'm not talking about taking even just 1 or 2 days off, although that's scary even for some. But to take a true vacation and be away for 2 weeks and not be calling in all the time and, you know, doing work all the time during that vacation. So 1, you just want to be able to do that. But 2, what about if you become incapacitated? What about if you were to contract COVID and not able to work for many weeks, right? What if something happens? And for many business owners, as you know, Dale, it's their primary source of income and actually, you know, their primary asset. And so just from a risk management standpoint, if you're not able to be away from your business, you are significantly, you're putting your livelihood and your assets at significant risk just by the fact that the business cannot operate without you. And we have talked, you know, today about how much we all love family-owned businesses. There is certainly the reality that while it may be your plan to have the business transfer from, you know, generation to generation, maybe your kids don't want that. Maybe at some point they say, oh, gosh, I saw all the challenges and trouble that mom and dad went through. I don't want to be in the family business. Or maybe they're equipped to do an aspect of the family business, but they're not necessarily equipped to run it all the way. Or again, maybe something happens where they're no longer able to run it. You know, I think about this with my parents' business. By the time they decided that they wanted to sell, the rest of us were sort of on our own paths and journey. And they really hadn't thought about, again, you know, valuation and, you know, this thought of kind of like, oh, we'll give it to all three of you. Yeah, that's not generally a practical solution, right? And it ends up breaking up a lot of families. And so, you know, I think that by thinking in a very strategic way about how you would sell your business, so if you position it to be able to sell it, it means you're thinking about value. It means you're thinking about how it can run without you. It means you're thinking about even how that family business can be separated in some sense operationally from the actual family, and you're actually planning for, you know, what the right path for the business is and who might be the right person to be in that leadership position, running the family, running the business longer term. So it's just more of an approach to how you would think about your business in a way to maximize, again, all the value that you've worked hard to create for so many years.
That's a great, it's really a great point. We do a lot of work with family conflict and other things. And, you know, so often, and this is particularly challenging because during COVID, when family businesses are shut down, that could be the only income. Everybody in the family is working in that business. So the entire family income and the stresses, and families are dealing with that stress. But prior to the pandemic, many experts were saying that it was one of the best times for family businesses to sell because the cost of capital was low, the economy was going pretty well. And so, you know, I mean, a lot of them didn't position themselves to do that. So that's really, really great advice, that even if you don't want to sell, you know, you really have to figure out, you know, what's it worth and how do I position it? You know, we talked last week about buy-sell agreements, you know, being with the family and other things, which I learned a lot about, which I think is very, very important. So
yeah, what about if there are three kids? What about if there are three kids? You know, here's a great point. Like if there are three kids and one wants to continue in the business and the other two don't, or not even equipped to run the business, that is something that often creates conflict because there's no structured way of really transferring all the assets to that one person, to that one child, without the other two feeling, oh, now I'm left out, I'm not getting the value, or they're staying in it just because they don't want to give up the, you know, the value that they have in that asset. But again, if the business in general is structured in a way to sell, then you can slice and dice, you know, the path of the business in many different ways.
And so, you know, as far as one of the things when I was teaching family business management, we talked a lot about family councils, family, you know, family offices, family advisors, and other things. I know you, with some of the smaller businesses, do you recommend an advisory board, you know, to the CEO of the business? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because one, you know, it can cut down on conflict in the family, which there's likely to be. So, how do you make those decisions when everyone in the family is not in agreement? But on the flip side, if everyone in the family is in agreement, that could lead to, making decisions that are not based on multiple views, that are not based on even reality. If everyone in the family is kind of, drinking from, the same Kool-Aid, it's, they're not getting the benefit of a lot of different perspectives. So I think an advisory board is absolutely essential, again, for a whole host of reasons, to address conflict, but also to address when the family members are all thinking in lockstep.
And I may invite Christina Duffy from SunTrust is on with us now. And, one of the things I've learned a lot during this crisis is how important it is to have a relationship with your bank, a relationship with your accountant, a relationship with an attorney, and a lot of small business, but also a relationship with your congressperson, with your mayor, with, where you do that. And Christina, could you comment on, if I know you're on mute, on the importance of relationship with the bank, with your banker?
Hi, sure. I think relationships across the board are essential. COVID is an excellent example of how impactful a relationship can be. Like, let's take PPE and go back a couple of months, right? One of your members, actually, Courtney, I believe her name is, right? Cited an example of having a little easier time with her application, with getting questions answered, with the stress related to everything tied to PPP, because she had a really solid relationship from the beginning. I guess going back to what you said, Jill, that sounding board, those relationships with your outside advisors, your accountant, your banker, attorneys, whatever it is, they too need to feed into that advisory board and help kind of keep everybody in check and I'm stuttering, sorry, but really to be that point of reality and contact in times of crisis. I can't stress enough how important it is, because we watched so many people struggle with PPP who didn't have those relationships ahead of time.
Excellent. And so
Absolutely.
Joe,
I want to just add a point here that sometimes it's even important for each member of the family to have their own set of advisors as well. So to have you have the accountant that's for the business, but they may need to each have even their own accountant or their own wealth advisor, because one of the things that can be problematic in a family business is there's sort of this thinking that the company's interests are in the interest of each individual person. And there are times when maybe, again, the individual needs to go in a different direction, and they need advice for that as well.
And unbiased advice. So the biggest challenge that I hear from all of our clients is cash flow now. Cash flow. And what's been your experience? And Christina, I may ask you about some of the options at a bank to help businesses with cash flow. What has been your experience with those businesses to take out loans, or what should they be thinking about doing?
So cash flow is it's a major challenge. And a lot of people are focused on revenue, top line revenue. But you can end up in a situation where the more your revenue grows, the worse your cash flow problem becomes. Right. And so looking at how your payments are coming in, the timing of those payments, that's just as critical as the amount that's coming in. And if you have to, with each new client, add more people or add more resources, you have to consider, how are you going to get the capital in order to acquire those resources necessary to perform for that client. So, having the people around you, the advisors, the bankers, who can help you to look at cash flow and just even understand the cash flow. So it starts with just thinking about cash flow, not just revenue, but again, the timing of the cash coming in and the cash going out. So thinking about that, being very aware of the terms of your contracts, trying to incentivize people paying sooner rather than later or paying up front. I think it's something that companies who say that they want to do business with small businesses have to be aware and have to think about those issues as well when they're setting up, their programs to do business. And again, having that relationship with your banker. As Christina said, being able to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, you know what, I'm in a little bit of a jam right now. Is there something we can do? What do you suggest? They're the experts. Let them help to figure that out. But if you don't have that relationship, just trying to call someone who you don't know and say, I'm in a jam, that's very hit or miss and probably not a good strategy.
So one of the big challenges is, and again, I may want Christina to weigh in, is credit. That a lot of businesses, you're a successful entrepreneur, you start out, you have perfect credit, but things happen that, the big companies don't pay you on time. So you're late paying those bills. And so your credit's not what it was. I want you to kind of, and I know you deal with that all the time with businesses, but your thoughts. And then I'd love to hear from Christina, your thoughts from the banking standpoint. Your hands may be tied if someone's credit isn't that good, but maybe there's some advice that you can give businesses to at least, look a little better before the bank. So your thoughts, Joe.
Yeah, so Dale, this is a really, really layered issue around credit. Mm-hmm. And I think especially when we start talking about the access to capital challenges for minority businesses, especially Black-owned businesses, it's a real problem. And it's a problem because the origin of it is rooted in a history that did not allow Black people to accumulate wealth. And so when you don't have wealth, what most people don't realize is that the majority of the funding to start businesses comes from personal savings and then friends and family. So if you don't have the personal savings and you don't have the friends and family that have that money, which again, both are related to wealth, you're starting out in a deficit position. You start your business because you have a dream and, you get something started. And we've seen many people, in fact, Black women are starting businesses at a faster rate than any other segment. The challenge is, you manage to get that business started, but as you said, Dale, then you have cash flow issues that you didn't anticipate. You're trying to grow. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And just trying to make it work with no safety net. You then end up having to not pay some other bill because you have payroll due. You have to keep paying the people who are working for you. And then you see the deterioration of the credit. Oftentimes we try to make the business owner seem irresponsible or like it's something that, they just chose not to pay bills. When in fact, it's that they were willing to do whatever was necessary in order to keep that business afloat because that is their livelihood. So it's a very layered issue. And I often hear, banks, again, getting a bad rap or kind of bearing the brunt. And, we know that there have historically been issues in banking, but banks are not equipped to give money, and it's not giving money. Banks don't give money. They loan money. And, they have to underwrite that because if they lose our money as a depositor, none of us would be very happy. So they bear a lot of the brunt of, the conversation about businesses, small businesses, especially minority-owned businesses, not being able to get access to capital. But it is a much more structural, layered issue than just simply banks don't want to lend to minority businesses.
Yeah, minority and other businesses from poor communities and so on. Christina, from a bank standpoint, as far as credit and other things, do you have any advice that you can give the small businesses as to what they need to do to look better before the banks if they need cash flow money?
Well, okay, so I couldn't agree more with what Jill has said about banks being in a difficult position. You know, your credit is a key component to the underwriting for any lending, right? And um, our legislation is such too that fair lending needs to be adhered to, and it should be adhered to, right? But the softer elements that Jill just brought up about the business owner that's doing anything and everything that they can to keep this business afloat, unfortunately, they don't earn merit points, right? Whether, you know, we can talk about whether we think they should or not. That's a totally separate topic. But it's a difficult, uh, it's a difficult thing to advise on kind of in a vacuum. The one thing I'll say is we have to look at credit, everyone, every single person, business owner or not, as another asset on your balance sheet. And it has to be treated very delicately because it's considered so heavily
Right.
when you're asking for assistance, loan assistance, whatever it is.
Well, that's a great way to put it, Kristen. I hadn't really thought of it that way, as an asset on your balance sheet. So I don't know how many people out there have really thought of it that way, but credit is an asset. You know, one of the things that I've said is that the whole credit system needs to be re-examined, just in general, not just for people of color, it's for everybody, because you don't realize that, you know, it's really based on a system where people are working 30 years in the same company, they get a paycheck every 2 weeks. Well, that's happening less and less and less, and more of us are working as entrepreneurs, and the income is often uncertain, it's unpredictable. And then if you're waiting, you know, I think Robert, I saw in the Q&A, Robert Argona has a good point that, you know, negotiating terms with clients is so key. But if the client is such a big company, you can't demand terms to say, I'm not going to work with you if you don't pay me in 2 weeks. They're going to say, well, we'll find somebody else, and they'll wait 90 days. And so I think that as we talk about the whole issues, this whole idea of re-examining how we do credit, and maybe there's an entrepreneur's credit. The other thing in defense of the banks is that when I on my show, one of the things I ask, if the business is 40, 50 years ago, how did you start? And they say, well, my mom or dad, they went to the bank and they got a character loan. They got a character loan. They said, you know, you don't have money, but I know you're good. And guess what? They made millions for the bank. But you're not allowed, Christina, at the bank now to do character loans because the federal government has overstepped.
Right.
And they don't realize how important it is. So your hands are tied. And, you know, and it really is hard. I don't know if you want to say anything about that.
No, I mean, I agree. It's character loans would be wonderful. I think our world would be completely different if we could do that. But we're not in a position right now to do that. I think a lot of times what we see small business owners doing, and it's out of necessity, is leveraging personal assets to support the business. I would imagine, especially now, I'm not a business banker, I'm a personal wealth banker, but especially now, people leveraging, their largest asset, their home, apart from their business, to help support that. It's challenging for sure.
Well, I just heard there was an article I heard on the news about a guy that was in college when I was there, and he borrowed $350,000 to start Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and he was about to go out of business, and his parents gave him another $275,000 loan. So he's the wealthiest man in the world until he gets divorced, but right now he's the wealthiest man in the world, and it wouldn't be if he was from a family that didn't have means. And so I applaud his success, and Amazon's an amazing story. But that's one of the realities that we as Americans need to understand, that we want good businesses to succeed. We don't want the hindrances of not coming from a wealthy family. And so one of the things I was talking earlier, and I don't normally recommend shows, but I'm watching on Netflix this Inventors of the 20th Century. And it's really a fascinating show of just all the inventions, from the toaster to the Wright brothers, the flight, to all sorts of things. And you really see that banks, government, and individuals were working together to encourage this kind of, and we've lost that. And largely because I think we are in this again, not to beat up anybody, but a shareholder-run country. And so we need to kind of get back to this entrepreneurship. And you've seen this for many, many years, Jill, and you've been preaching this for a long, long time. Where are we?
Yeah,
From
Dale,
are
I have to
we
add,
better
Dale,
off?
I have to add that there is a solution, or there is something that we're just starting to work on as a pilot to address, and testing out some concepts and theories that we have around how you actually could provide capital. I won't even say loans, but how you can provide patient capital that's structured based on the specific needs of the business, that are still producing an economic return, because that's the only way that you stimulate private investment and private capital to get involved, but in a way that is based much more on character and getting to know the entrepreneur and what that person's drive is and what their abilities are and their capabilities, et cetera. So stay tuned for that.
Well, wonderful. And I think I sent you, I don't know if I did, but I know Tim Sullivan I wrote an article and did a white paper on this idea called Entrepreneur Zones. And the whole idea is to really provide tax credits for people to invest in businesses in the poor sectors of New Jersey society and hopefully national society, and to really put it into these businesses to help them grow so that investors get the tax credits that they want. The businesses get the capital to really be the kind of businesses they want to be. But I think all of you that are on this call, it's important for you to reach out to the people you know and say, entrepreneurship is it. We need everybody, we need all hands on deck. We can't assume that politicians really get it around that. Some do, most don't. But if for your own business or the business of a family member or the business of a friend, we need to be a lot more aggressive about talking about and supporting family businesses. Jill, you were going to say?
No, that's absolutely right. And, you know, I think it's unfortunate that opportunity zones have not evolved to do exactly what you're talking about. I think they could have. I think they still could. But that really should have been the intent of opportunity zones, to not just drive real estate, but really to drive investment in small businesses. And especially when you look in certain communities, when we think about the majority of capital that's coming outside of just your personal savings, coming from friends and family in those communities, there aren't friends and family who have that capital. So we need to, you know, sort of artificially create those friends and family and the dollars associated with that through things like opportunity zones, or what you're talking about as far as these entrepreneur zones.
And so now in our audience is a gentleman named Robert Aragona. And Robert, so look at your, well, I guess I don't get the Q&A. Robert, in the chat box, could you share your email? He basically says he has a company that they can guarantee a minimum of 100,000 capital raised in 30 to 45 days. Not based as much on credit, but just send your email. So if anyone's interested, you know, there are resources out there, Jill, and I know you've been really good at helping people with resources, but there are things out there, but nobody seems to, there's no central place where you're a business owner, you're working real hard, where you find out this kind of information. So through the chat box, Robert, if you could share that with everybody, that would be great. Jill, what kind of resources have you found over the years, and including Eiffel, that people should be accessing or at least knowledgeable about?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that before you even get to resources, you actually have to know. And what I find is that a lot of people don't really know exactly what they need, or what they think they need is, you know, I need $500,000, I need $250,000. Well, to do what? And, you know, that, you know, people say working capital. Well, if you could talk with some of your customers and get the terms changed on a couple of your contracts, would that address your cash flow issues? And then would you not need as much working capital? People will think that they need, you know, a loan of $500,000 for something, but maybe what they need is different forms of capital. They need a credit line of a certain amount for working capital needs. They need a term loan for an asset-based financing for other needs. You know, a mortgage is yet a different need on a building. So, you know, I think even before people, I think if people can be more specific about the needs and even the timing of those needs, they would better be able to access resources. Or you can even go to your bank and say, this is what I'm looking for. And they'll say, we can't do this, but here's where you might go. Or to an organization like ours, where we can actually help businesses to figure out what it is they need and then steer them in the right directions. But, you know, small business development centers are a good place to start. But even if you do a search online for the specific need that you have, you will actually be amazed at what pops up.
So we have some questions. One of our listeners is, or viewers is wondering, you know, how do I find out how to sell my company? Say I've done everything, my company has real value, I have someone value it. You know, how do I go about selling? And I know there are a couple, and you can reach out to us. There are a couple of wonderful brokers who we trust who can sell. But Jill, what's your advice? If somebody wants to sell, what should they do?
Yeah, so first thing is even thinking from a personal standpoint, what do you want to get out of selling the business? You know, what are your thoughts? Then actually getting a valuation of the business, right? To see if what you're thinking you want to get out of it is in line with reality. You know, you might be thinking, oh, I'll sell my business if I can get $10 million. A valuation comes back and the valuation is at $2 million. So it's not the right time to sell. Maybe there's a little more that you have to do to sell. But, you know, having that valuation, I actually really recommend that businesses get a professional valuation sooner rather than later. Again, it's an asset. You need to know, even for insurance purposes, right, how much your business is worth. And then, you know, talking to people in that same industry who have sold their business, because there's a lot of nuance. So talk to people who have exited their business to understand what their issues were. And then, you know, potentially a business broker or a small investment bank would be the way to go to get a professional to help you with that transaction.
One of the other things that we've heard a lot about, and have mentioned somewhat in the chats, is factoring your invoices. So, you know, if you have to wait 90 days, and I've heard some people have used it very effectively, some people have had challenges with it. What has been the experience of your clients?
Yeah, so factoring can be a resource that can be used very effectively, as you said. The challenge is if your margins are really thin, you're potentially going into a negative position by factoring because you're losing money on that invoice. So it's really important to understand, again, the cost of the factoring. And if factoring is short-term, you know, typically it should be a short-term solution to easing your cash flow challenges so that you can get the volume that you need so that then, and amass the cash, save cash, so that you then no longer have to factor, or even until such time as you can get a line of credit. But that's where, again, you know, talking to a banker and looking at the cash flow needs, typically you're factoring because you have cash flow challenges. But it should be short-term. That's not a long-term solution. Not
a long-term solution. Excellent. Well, we're coming up at the end of our hour. And there's some great questions about, well, who do I talk to? I'm looking about, I'm trying to grow my business and those things. So to reach us, to reach me, Sue Slavin and Maura Panuski, Rothman at fdu.edu. Jill, if they want to reach you, what should they, what's your email and contact info?
Yeah, sure. You can reach us, our general organization, the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. One, you can just search that. But two, you can find us at We Are Eifel, WEAREIF, as in Frank, EL.org. WeAreEifel.org.
WeAreEifel.org. And again, we're Rothman at fdu.edu. Well, Jill.
And my email is just Jill at weareeifel.org.
Okay, Jill at weareeifel.org. Well, thank you so much. There's a lot. We've covered a lot. The whole point of these shows is to get people thinking about their business in new ways. You did a great job today. Christina, I want to thank you for being our assistant host. So, but I want to thank everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully you're having a great summer. I can't believe we're in the summer now. This year is just going by. It's unbelievable. So thank you all, and we will see you next week, same time, same place. Take care.
Thanks, Dale. Good to be
Thank you.
here. See ya.